Right, well, governments have some winning ideas and some losing ideas. And then there is that category in between. Ideas that should be winning, but which end up looking a bit like losing. And slotting right in there is the universal credit. It's one of the biggest reforms of the welfare system for decades, integrating different in-work and out-of-work benefits into one, ensuring that you're better off working than not. The problems and delays in setting it up are well known, but one think tank, the Resolution Foundation, which is a big supporter of the idea, does have other worries. Chris Cook has had an exclusive look at what they are going to say about it.
The coalition has not been shy of big reforms, but one of their greatest redesigns has scarcely left the drawing board. The universal credit, an attempt to bring some simplicity to the welfare system, replaces 6 big benefits with one super benefit. But tomorrow, a major piece of research by the Resolution Foundation, a think tank, will lay out some of the key problems the next government will face in keeping it together. Now, you probably haven't heard all that much about universal credit, which is odd for such an enormous reform. You've probably certainly heard a lot less than you have about welfare caps, or bedroom taxes, or subsidies, or changes to disability benefit. Why, though? Well, it's because, in truth, universal credit really just hasn't got going yet. So here's the architect of universal credit. As one of the few people to keep the same top cabinet job throughout this parliament, Work and Pension Secretary Ian Duncan-Smith stood a good chance of seeing his plans through, especially as they really enjoy bipartisan support. His hopes were high. Back in 2011, his aim was for 2.8 million people to be on universal credit by now, an ambition that's been delayed and delayed and delayed. The real number? It's about 30,000.
Your national insurance number is extremely important to you. Make a note of it so that it's always at hand.
There have been big delays to this massive reform of our social insurance system, but it's slowly getting going now. And it's not just a merger, it's an enormous change. Now, this graph shows you how much a single parent can earn once you take taxes and benefits into account, as they increase the amount that they work from no hours a week up to 40 hours a week. And what you can see is there's an area of the graph where the line is flat. So between around 3 and 12 hours a week for this person, the amount that they earn as they increase the number of hours that they work doesn't rise. You can then see there's a sudden spike in the amount that they get when they work 16 hours. So that explains why so many people won't take a job unless they can work more than 16 hours a week for it, because they feel the benefit system doesn't make it worth their while. Now, the blue line on this graph is the same sort of thing, but this time it's for universal credit claimants. And what you can see is there are no flat areas on the line. That means if you work more hours, you always make more money. The government hopes a lot of people who are currently not working will take up what they call mini-jobs, you know, a few hours a week to help them get back into the labour force. The Resolution Foundation's big concern is that a lot of people might get stuck in those mini-jobs and not move on to work with longer hours.
We see 2 groups that are particularly at risk here, if you like. So single parents, who we know respond to financial incentives. So in the current regime, they're asked to work 16 hours, and actually many of them do precisely that. So the risk now is that with the new regime, when their sweet spot moves down towards 8 hours instead, they all start working 8 hours. The second group, who we know much less about, are those working age adults without children. At the moment, they don't really have much interaction with the in-work benefit regime. The risk now is twofold. First, that they get stuck in low-hour jobs. And secondly, that there's just a cost to the state here, that we're effectively subsidising people to work part-time who don't really have any barriers to working full-time.
I think people moving from welfare to work will recognise that it's a positive step for their lives, for their families and for the future. And there'll be a desire in people to progress, to take more hours and to move out of universal credit ultimately because they want to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. But also there are some very important things that the system will have to do to mitigate the risk of people getting stuck.
Now, the main mitigation effort is known in the jargon as in-work conditionality. We're fairly used to the idea that out-of-work people come to places like this, where they get help and get pushed to take jobs. Tough love for the workless is politically popular. But lots of universal credit claimants with jobs will now go through a similar process if they aren't earning enough. They'll be pressed to push for pay rises and for more hours of work.
So much of this comes down to the relationship between the claimant and the job centre. So clear expectations from the beginning that we want you to work, find work and progress in work. So that there's this sort of culture of no surprises that says, here's the expectation for you and here's what we'll do for you. Secondly, I think the way that job centre more broadly interacts is crucial. Having a culture in that place that says you are here to help people progress through work, you're not just here to process payments. That's starting, but there's improvements that can be